Welcome, friends. It's time for another Tokenomics. I've got a very, very exciting episode for you today. Today, no Mishka. I've got Anton Backman, principal at Play Ventures.
Greetings, travelers.
It's me, Ethan, the executive producer of Legendary Heroes Unchained, and I'm very, very excited to have our special guest, Khalid Alroumi from Eluvium.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Ethan, for having me.
Yeah, of course. I was really excited. Khalid said yes to coming on because as we look at crypto winter and everyone being worried about the bear market, Illuvium just did a $72 million land sale. And we're here to talk about the land sale and all things Illuvium with the system and economy designer on that project. So, Khalid, can you start by just giving us a little background about yourself and your experience in game development?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm from Kuwait, and I've been a gamer all my life. Being from Kuwait, it's a bit hard to get into the game industry. So, all of my experience actually comes from starting my own studios. So, I've been working in free-to-play games, running my own studios for around 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And just focusing mostly on build and battle games with small teams, taking the big guys head to head. So it's been a really tough journey.
Yeah, I bet.
And actually, we had to close our studios on 2021, because the free to play space was becoming much harder for indies, I think, especially if you're focusing on these type of games. The LTV versus CPI issue was becoming pretty difficult to solve, basically.
Yeah.
So the Web3 game looked interesting, and then we decided to take a leap on that.
Awesome. That's really amazing that you have that kind of indie developer spirit and you were able to grow something and build a team, build a game, release it from Kuwait. Is there much of a developer community out there, or is it just mostly you?
It's pretty minimal. Like there is some hobbyists, I would say, some little attempts here and there, but no, nothing major. Nothing major.
Oh, yeah. So why don't you give us a start and just tell us about Eluvium? What is the game? Where is it in its development cycle?
Yeah, sure. So basically, Illuvium is an ecosystem that consists of two parts, essentially. So we have one part, which is the DAO, that has the ILV token at its heart, basically where the token holders are the owners of the DAO. And then you have the other part, which is the Eluvium Universe, which will consist of, as much as I am trying to avoid, calling it a metaverse, but it's like a universe that consists of multiple games. That at the spine you have the Eluvials, which are our versions of Pokemons, that will be usable across all the games. So currently what we have Illuvium Arena, which is an auto battler, something similar to TFT. We have Illuvium Overworld, which is a third-person RPG where you get to run around, collect resources, get into battle with Illuvials and trying to capture them. And the last game that we currently have is Illuvium Zero, which is the land gameplay, basically.
Got it. So you thought, well, it was really hard to make one build and battle live ops game with the team of 10. I know, I'll go work on a game that's 3 games simultaneously.
Exactly. It's a bit crazy, but this is what happened. And honestly, at the time where I wanted to, get into the space, most of the projects were not that appealing. Illuvium was very appealing to me.
Yeah,
Was very
absolutely.
appealing, yeah.
Just to give
What would you
people-
say? What would you say were the main things that attracted you to the project?
So me coming from a background where gameplay was the first thing that we focus on in terms of games, it is something that is very appealing to see, a studio that is gameplay first, where the moment that I had the first interview with Aaron, one of the co-founders, the first thing that we get to talk about was the depth and how are we going to achieve the depth. And we started solving problems related to achieving depth with minimal complexity and things like that. Nothing really compares with the other meetings that I had with the other companies and on what they are focusing. So Yeah, that was the main thing I would say.
Got it. I mentioned the land sale as one of the success points already for Illuvium. $72 million just closed the other day. Can you tell us, do you know some of the other kind of vanity stats? I know Illuvium is just crushing it, both with its token and with the alluvials themselves. So give the audience a sense of the game's or the project's success so far.
Yeah, sure. So, believe it or not, like Illuvium was founded on, I think, if I'm not mistaken, on late 2020, and until now we didn't have any major NFTs out. Like we have some small things here and there, but nothing major. The land sale is the first NFT collection that is out. We currently have around 220K Discord users, 330,000 on Twitter. You know, I think our community is by far the biggest achievement that we have. Their loyalty. We have run into some incidents where there have been some compromises, some hacks, and the community stood by us, and then it really proved. Like even I think I would attribute that the land sale and the success that it achieved is to the community. So and we are currently around a little bit over 200 employees.
Got it. Wow,
So the team
that's
is big,
huge.
yeah.
And the Illuvium token, I'm just looking at it on CoinGecko right now. It's at $270 per token, with a $176 million circulating market cap right now. So it's really an amazing kind of basis for your DAO and for your community, and a sign of how much that community believes in it. And between the token holdings, the liquidity of the token, and now the land sale, Illuvium has a lot of gunpowder in the barrel with which to develop all these games.
Yeah, exactly. And it's definitely this year is going to be very interesting for Illuvium. Like we got a lot of stuff that are in the pipeline, so it's going to be very interesting.
Got it. What's your role on the team?
So currently my official role is a game designer, and what I focus on is mostly systems, economy, and balance design. I move from working on Illuvium 0, which is around gameplay, to the overworld and the Boto Battler as well.
Got it. So that
Is there anything you could pinpoint from mirroring back to your free-to-play design experience, that anything can highlight what are the biggest kind of changes in your work right now that you have to also take into account how an open economy might be sort of affecting the economy. Obviously there are additional components also with the land gameplay, which we can get into in a few moments, but anything you could highlight on kind of what feels different now?
Yeah, sure. So I think the area where it feels very different is the land gameplay. So Illuvium 0 is basically very similar to a city builder, where you get to create resources, build buildings, optimize your layout to increase your resource output. So something similar to what you would see in a builder game on mobile. But the way you try to optimize it is completely different. So no longer we are just focusing on retention and monetization. Here we have some other things to put into perspective, So that's by far the biggest challenge, is that what is my paradigm exactly? What I'm trying to focus on optimizing. It's completely different. Here you might need to optimize for the floor price for NFTs. You need to make sure that the economy is sustainable. You need to make sure that the cadence of which the players play are not necessarily similar to free-to-play, where you want them to build a habit and then keep on playing. No, it's completely different. And I still didn't, put the dots exactly, or this is the way how it should be done. It's still a mystery to me. I'm still discovering it.
Got it. Why do you think that's really interesting? Why do you think the play pattern will be or should be different?
Okay, so I could give you an example. So in our land gameplay, it's I would say that the gameplay is not really the star of the show. Lands, once we get into, like, I could discuss them in detail later on, but it's like the main purpose of them is to generate fuel. So, the experience needs to be engaging, but it doesn't need to be tedious enough where it's like we are making the landowners really get to work to get their fuel. You want the experience to be just enough for them to be engaging enough, but you don't need them to be on the app always. You don't need to drain them or just keep monetizing them constantly. It doesn't work like that. It needs to be a pleasant experience for them, where they would be able to get their yield without having to go through a tedious amount of work.
Got it. So if I think about some of the land games or appointment games I've played on browser, mobile, free-to-play, there might be a reason, if I'm playing optimally, for me to visit my city once an hour, or even more frequent if I really want to min-max it. And that the theory behind something like that is that forming that daily habit where someone's checking their city every hour to collect their resources and set new appointments and collect appointments, that will lead to long-term retention, just because when they think they have a free moment, what they're going to do is open up their city. And it sounds like with Eluvium, you're expecting a different player type with different motivations. And if someone's more of an investor than a game player, they might want to only check in once a day, or even less, a couple times a week. And that you're, as a designer, focusing on that play pattern more. Is that right?
That's 100% right. Like, you don't want it to be tedious enough where the investor would say, you know what, it's not worth my time. Why would I want to keep that land? So that's why I actually had to design it in a way where it's like logging in once a day is more than enough, and it needs to be, as seamless as possible. But of course, like, this is a theory. I could be wrong, but like, this is how it is now. This is how it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I would love to learn the results of any A/B tests that happen as a result, to try and test that frequency. I know for my for the economy I'm working on currently, I am focusing more on game players than investors as a player type. And that may be an advantage of not having a token out there yet, that we can think, people who are in it purely for yield and purely for investment are great, but they can also be very challenging for your community. And so, our theory is by focusing on the gameplay, will make something that people who start as investors will actually want to check in every hour and maximize their resources anyways, because they're having fun. So it'll be interesting to see which theory works out.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the game. Like, this is what happens in Illuvium land gameplay, which is mostly investor players who are seeking yields. But that's completely not the case when it comes to Illuvium Arena, which is the auto battler. It's completely different incentives.
Right. So if you think about the different experiences, there might be a reason to check in with different Illuvium experiences every hour. But the land itself, had what was the floor price for even the lowest tier land was quite high, right?
Yeah, I think like now currently, I'm not sure. It could be half an ETH.
So you can expect anybody who is playing the land game currently is in that investor class, and that leads to then the design. That's such a great insight. That I'm going.
Yeah, and actually tying to that, I have a question maybe to both of you. If we assuming that, or if the assumption is that we put a good amount of early assets into the hands of players before the game is out and before it's maybe discoverable through conventional ways, and then on the other hand, on free to play, in the free to play market, usually, or for many games, some of those really early cohorts are going to be the golden cohorts for a game that will stick around for years and monetize for years. Now, in the scenario where we're putting assets into the hands of either purely investors or investor gamers, what do you think is the audience that we're attracting here in the beginning, and is it a good or a bad thing, or does it bring its own challenges with it?
Yeah, I think it's super challenging to have an audience of investors. You know, this is something Mike Rubinelli and I talked about a lot on his episode when he was explaining blockchain brawlers. Like, if you have people who are just asking, who are saying like, hey, you made this gameplay balance and now the floor price is down. What are you going to do about it? And his response was, I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm optimizing for the gameplay experience, not for the floor price. And this is the right long-term choice for the game. And that I thought was really interesting. And so I mean, investors as a class of player, it's just a new type of player that come with their own needs, I think, that are unique. And it sounds like Khalid is already kind of understanding their needs and adapting to them. I would think, you know, a lot of the success that I've had on different free-to-play games has come from guild experiences. And in a guild, it's pretty, you know, even in the top guilds in a game, it's common for there to be a couple heavy hitters who are like the really big spenders, and then a lot of other people supporting them somehow. And so, you know, without tipping my hat too much about some of my forthcoming designs, that's something I'm thinking about a lot, which is, if I have, for every investor, how do I design gameplay that 50 free players might want to support that person, and for them all to have fun and benefit together?
Yeah, so I would say that the initial audience, as you said, Anton, is mostly speculators, investors looking to make profit. I think a very small minority of them are really diehard fans of the gameplay or the enjoyable experience, and I think it's a bit tricky. Ideally, you would like to, you know, to tip them over towards, you know what, like, this is a really cool game, I don't mind playing it, or I like to playing it. Like, that would be the best scenario, but they are definitely tricky, and I don't think usually they would come with patience. I think they lack patience. That would be a major issue.
Yeah, I mean, on the benefit, though, like, the team has business success front-loaded, right? Like, I've been on projects that have never achieved $72 million in sales. I've been on projects where it takes many, many months of live ops to achieve that level of sales and revenue. And so, on one hand, having this level of success gives the team a lot of security and runway, I imagine. I mean, 200 employees is a lot of people. That's a pretty high burn rate, but like, having the security that you're not needing to, if you're in a venture-backed company, constantly be thinking about how do we get to the next metrics of business success so that we unlock our next round of funding. It almost feels like you can relax into it a little bit and take your time, which is very like, it's a benefit. I mean, just having that front-loaded business success, I think, is a benefit. And then on the flip side, you need to, as Khalid said, think about the considerations of those people who are believing in you currently, and figure out how you want to design gameplay for them, and also releases for them, right? Mm-hmm. I expect they want like constant forward momentum.
For sure.
As an economy designer, what are some of the challenges you face when you're thinking about setting up the economy for all these interlocking parts, right? Like, all three of us know how difficult it is just to develop the power economy for one free-to-play game that's self-contained, and now you're talking about having multiple different experiences. It sounds very exciting, but also very challenging. So kind of how do you approach your work? What are some of the challenges you face when thinking about how do I develop this long-term sustainable economy?
Yeah. So that's definitely a major issue now. that I don't think has a very clear answer yet. But as I mentioned before, like no longer we're just focusing on retention and monetization. We need to keep in mind that the players want the floor price for their NFTs to remain, or if not just increase in price. You need to make sure that the utility token has enough sinks in the economy, and its price is stable or going up. And basically the key question is how could you make sure to create enough utility for the blockchain assets in your ecosystem? That's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's like, how could I convince you that this NFT has a lot of utility without attaching a monetary yield to it?
Right.
That's the main problem. That's the main problem. This is what we're trying to achieve.
Right. So you said, what is so when somebody owns land, what does the land-based gameplay look like or shaping up like? What are the is it outputting tokens? Is it outputting non-crypto resources that are used in other game modes? Like, how does it tie into this ecosystem?
Yeah, so it's funny that you said that, because land is a purely utility token producing asset.
Okay.
It's
Got
not
it.
like the other things that are like the Illuviums, which are similar to the Pokemon, things like that. So we know that, like, we were not trying to tiptoe around it. Like, these are the lands. This is
Right.
what they do. They produce fuel, which is an ERC 20 token. And the fuel is basically used in all of Illuvium games. So basically, I could give you a use case is that if you need to craft an item in the overworld, you would need, on top of the materials, some fuel. And that fuel is generated from the land gameplay. So once a user generates the fuel, they could directly switch it to ETH via a liquidity pool that we're going to set up. And players who want to craft stuff, who wants to catch or go into trips into the overworld, they need to buy fuel from there. So that's exactly how it is now.
And is the fuel earned passively through land ownership, or is there a active gameplay component also to generating fuel?
So it's basically like there is some gameplay element to it, where there is like some game theory, because we have 3 types of fuel, and each land can produce 3 types of fuel, and you could optimize your land depending on which type of fuel you want to generate, and that has some gameplay elements in it. But most of the time you're just clicking, produce fuel, and then you're going to wait a few hours, then you get your fuel. That's basically how it is.
Got it. Because I think I've seen these kind of currency generating programs and staking programs being usually divided into 2 camps. So either you have the kind of passive approach, where simply kind of owning and passively staking something against the protocol or against the treasury yields you some kind of a reward. And then the other camp, which is maybe a bit more emerging, would be tying most, if not all, of these gameplay rewards that are reserved from the treasury tied to gameplay actions. So let's say logging in daily, doing your daily quests, participating in events, etc. And through that kind of bootstrap a bit more active gameplay rather than only rewarding sort of passive ownership. And personally, I think the latter camp, obviously there's a wide spectrum here and a bit of a mix and match most of the projects out there. Personally, I like the latter one more, with more active participation being rewarded in the daily gameplay. You possibly also tied to skill and how you manage on the weekly leaderboards, monthly leaderboards, etc. And I think it also ties a bit closer to why I think some of those leading DeFi protocols manage to do their own governance token distribution so well. So if we look at something like Compound and Uniswap, I think Uniswap mainly, which ran the protocol and the service ran for years without any native token. And to listeners who are not familiar with Uniswap, it's a decentralized, the leading decentralized exchange built on Ethereum. And then when Uniswap decided that they're going to have their own native governance token, when there was a use case for it, then those were distributed to the users of Uniswap who had been using the protocol up until a certain timestamp. And therefore, the whole initial supply went to the active users of Uniswap. And obviously, I had been using the protocol. I liked the service that it provided, and naturally, I had a stronger belief to that product beyond kind of the speculative value of the Uniswap token. And that's maybe where I'm a fan of maybe in the future seeing more of these gameplay rewards and governance token rewards being distributed to active players that continuously participate in the game, do gameplay, play with other players, etc. But naturally, we'll see a lot of these hybrid models going forward.
Right, because it sounds like Khalid and the Eluvium team have the challenge of they have a strong community of investors that they need to transform into game players by making fun experiences for them. And the type of model you talked about sounds like, how do we attract and retain a group of players, and then at some point we turn them into investors by rewarding them for their gameplay and their belief in the
exactly. And there I think the approach is more about increasing the metrics across the board. So with a game, you're looking to retain people, you're looking to monetize them, and by progressively introducing more on-chain elements, you're sort of incentivizing them even more to become an integral part of that game community or that game ecosystem. But again, just playing spitball here.
Yeah, just to add a bit on that, it's like what I think we're trying to do is we're trying to cater for the different types of, I don't know what you want to call it, like people who are taking stake in your ecosystem. So the land gameplay might be more inclined for investors, while we have the auto battler, which is maybe more for gameplay heavy players, while the overworld is maybe for a type of explorers or people who might want to take risk and they want to see, like, do I get this rare alluvial or not, you know. So what we're trying to do is just like to mix it up, because, you know, we do have an ecosystem, and this is what we're trying to do.
Got it. What state are each of these three games in? I know that I know I filled out a form for beta for the auto battler, so I know that some people are out there testing it right now. But what state of development are these three different experiences in currently?
Yeah, so speaking about the beta, actually, it's like I had a lot of, you know, promising a lot of people that, you know, I could help get them in, but those promises weren't filled in, and I think that people in charge of this in our cup, I think they hate me now.
Oh man! So I invited the wrong person onto the podcast, is what you're saying? If my end game was just to get a team.
Yeah. So yeah, like Illuvium Arena, which is our auto battler, is currently on private beta, and we're planning to release another version, if I'm not mistaken, by the end of the month or maybe early next month. And it's going very well. The feedback have been amazing. You could really see how people in this space are really hungry to have their hands on something that is, you know, that has good gameplay that they want to play. The overworld, we're still working on it, and I think there is like a version ready to be put in front of users. I'm not sure when. I don't want to put a date on it, but perhaps maybe in a month or two, I would say. And Illuvium 0, which is the land gameplay, we're planning to release an open alpha version, which should be accessible for everyone next month. Not sure, maybe like we're going to try mid next month, something like that.
Regarding the testing aspect, now if we look at mobile free-to-play, then, I mean, you push a build, you acquire users, very kind of, you can, a lot of stuff you can control in terms of cohort size, what countries you're acquiring from, age groups, etc. And now, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of this test user base comes from your Discord. There are early supporters, early investors, early players, etc. Do you feel that the feedback from this process is more valuable or less valuable than, for example, the feedback you're getting on your product by acquiring users in the more Web 2 way? during soft launch, or basically, what are your feelings on kind of is this a better model, or is this currently still a worse model?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is that it's definitely the feedback would be biased, especially if they have invested in it. They wouldn't complain as much as someone who would just close the game, and you would see they want retention as low as 25 or something like that. That's the bottom truth. So what we're testing on is not really how much are they engaged, but more of just in trying to prove the product. Are we meeting their expectations? The overall sentiment, things that are qualitative as opposed to quantitative, as much as in the Web 2 space. We are still early. I'm still trying to think of what type of KPIs would I be looking at if we're running a Web 3 game. That's still, I would love to read an article like that.
Yeah. I hopefully I'll write one of those someday. I expect that as a community of game developers, we will invent a lot of new metrics and introduce them into the vocabulary. One I've been thinking a lot about, as an example, I'm very interested in finding out if there's a correlation between game engagement and token price and token volume, right? I have a theory that the more DAO you have in your games, the more activity you'll have on your token, and that's part of what's so interesting about Web3 games, is that because of the decentralized nature of token exchange, there will be people buying and selling and trading your tokens that might not even know you're a game. They might just randomly be active on different swapping protocols, or just purely they're just playing the game of trading. And so that's one of the ones I'm most interested in right now in terms of new metrics, is and new exploration. What is the relationship between game engagement and floor price of NFTs and token trading activities? And are these is it in our control, or is it out of our control?
That's very interesting that you said that, because if you have an example like Thetan Arena, where it's you've seen their user base just grow, but it almost had no impact on their token price. So that shows you there is a weak link there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a good metric is that if the link is pretty strong, then this shows that most of your users are Web3 folks. So
I think one of the problems with a lot of the economies I've seen so far, and I've talked about it before, is inflationary tokens, that the gameplay where the more people who join, the more token supply is created, like SLP or Thetan's tokens, and that if there aren't appropriate utility for that token, if there's no taps that take it out of the marketplace, as you have more players out of the economy, it's just creating supply is naturally going to decrease the price, and that's not what you want with the game. You want a game where the more people who join it, the token price either stays stable or increases. If it's decreasing because of your success, then you have a product that's not sustainable long term.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you think about, I know that's a very broad question, but how do you think about building that sustainable economy for these multiple interweaving experiences? It's one of the things that both most excites me as a designer and most frightens me as a designer about it. So I'm kind of just curious how you're approaching the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely a very hard problem to solve, and we've seen a lot of companies fall into that same hole over and over again, not thinking long term enough. But I think the approach to solve it is, let's try to avoid having the people or the players who generate the demand for the token, their incentive shouldn't be that we want to generate even more of that token. I think that's the bottom line of the problem. You need to isolate. So you have people who generate the token, and then you need other people who are consuming it, who their intention is not to increase their production. Otherwise, it's going to be a cycle that will spiral out of control.
Got it. So in Eluvium, it sounds like you'll have one group of players who own the land and are producing fuel, and then you'll have other players who are collectors, who want to collect all the Illuviums they can in different events in the overworld gameplay, and for everything they do, they're going to need fuel. So either they need to buy a piece of land and produce their own, or multiple pieces of land, or if their need for fuel outstrips their supply, they'll need to trade for it from other players who own it.
That's
right?
exactly how we're doing it. That's 100% right. So we have the landowners who are generating the fuel, and then you have all the other type of players who are seeking these NFTs, and they are after the utility that is coming from those NFTs. They generate the demand for the fuel.
And is there any free daily fuel, or ability to create some amount of fuel for non-landowning players? Or do they essentially need to pay to play?
So there are ways to play without needing fuel. So in all the NFT assets that we have, it's mostly tiered into tier 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 5. So usually the tier 0s do not cost fuel, and you can play them like without having to spend any money. But for any tier beyond tier 0, you need to go buy some fuel from the liquidity pool and then do the actions needed to acquire one of these NFTs.
So does this also include, if we think about the onboarding process? So is Eluvium a game, or is Arena, for example, a game where for the first session you need to connect your wallet, or is there a free-to-play mode that you can try out sort of in a more frictionless way? How are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, so in Arena we have different game modes. So we have one which is the PvP, and then we have one that is called Survival, which is like a wave-based PvE mode. And we have one that is the Leviathan, which is basically like a type of wager game mode. So the survival mode at its current state, which these things are subject to change, but you can hop on, play without needing to have any of the NFTs, because daily we're going to generate NFTs for you, and you can just play that part of the game without having to have NFTs. But if you want to go to the PvP, that's a different story. You need to have your own NFTs to do so. So we're trying to mix it up.
Got it. And then presumably that process as a first-time player, when you've been engaging with the free modes, then assuming there's some design trying to funnel the players to create a wallet, connect a wallet. Are you thinking about having, for example, hosted wallets for people who are creating it for the first time, or do you think you already immediately when you're looking to convert people to wallet players that they'll have a MetaMask or something else available?
So we're still a bit early to 100% solve this, but we want to eliminate the friction as much as possible, so I can't give you a very hard answer, unfortunately. Yeah.
Got it.
One of the things when I asked for vanity stats, you talked about you have a very large Discord community, a very large Twitter community, and that's like the strength of the project and the backbone of the project. And as a designer, how much time do you spend interacting with the community? Like I could see myself get into a trap of basically spending all day on Discord and not doing any of my spreadsheet work or spec work or other, like there's a positive and a negative. So what are your interactions with your community? How do you use them to help make your designs better, help you make better choices. And then on the flip side, how do you guard your own personal time and space and make room for yourself and not spend all day working and all night on Discord? These are like the traps I fear for myself.
Yeah, so this is definitely a new environment for me, like coming from free to play, where we sit in the dark development for a year and a half, and then we come out to the public, then we engage with the community. Here it's completely different, and honestly, I don't spend as much time as I want with the community, because as I said, like the game is growing so fast. We have multiple products, and our design team is fairly small, so we don't have really enough time to do so. Plus, the community are very hungry for information because they are most of the time invested into the project. And as much as you want to be transparent, you don't want to say something and then they would invest based on that something that you said, then it changes, then you can imagine how the backlash would be. So it's definitely tricky. I try to be how would I say it? Like it's like I very careful with whatever we say. We try to be as transparent as we can, but it's very tricky. It's very tricky.
Yeah,
it's very new to me.
It's almost like you need your own media team, right? Like whose job it is to view community, like beyond community management, beyond marketing, like a PR team whose job it is to plan out the messaging for the community on a regular basis to like keep them satisfied.
Yeah, and it's very hard to keep track of what things have been said, what things have changed, in videos and interviews and on Discord channel. It's very hard to keep track of all of that.
Yeah. How big is the design team currently? How many peers do you have?
Currently we are 4 people, including one of the co-founders, which is Aaron.
Got it. That's
so
that's really. I mean, products. I could have a team of 4 designers on an auto battler, on just an auto battler, and still have capacity for more, or like work for more. So that's a really small team when I think about this many different interconnected products.
Yeah, it's definitely, and maybe that's why this is what attracted me to Eluvium. I'm just addicted to this small team vs big projects.
Yeah. What are some of the lessons you've learned so far going from this free-to-play, 10 years of free-to-play development into Web3? I think a lot of the DOF audience is primarily free-to-play mobile. I think that's where the majority of the listeners are. And if they're listening to this, they've either red pilled like me or they're toying with it and want to learn more. As you've made this transition, what are some of the things you've learned? I mean, we've already highlighted a couple of them, but in terms of player types. But what are some of the new lessons already about crypto game development?
So by far, like the biggest difference is the power of community and how much it could, how can I say it, empower a game studio. Like this one is something that is completely different. Like in free to play, the way we handled it was, as I said, we sit in the dark and then here is our project, and then we look at some numbers and either we kill it or we keep it. Here it's completely different. You feel like you have some other parties that are with you in the journey. You're not alone, and then you're not just solving it on your own and then putting it out there. No, your entire team, you have token holders, you have people who are interested in the game, you have different type of parties. Yeah, so it's definitely a very different experience than free to play, and I think free to play should take some of these parts and try to implement them. Whether it is, even if they just take the token as part of just like the fundraising, I think that would be just enough of a achievement compared to what you used to be in free to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked a little bit about this with Space Dog when we talked about Void Runners and developing releasing your game design document, essentially your white paper, as part of the process. I, as a designer, am notoriously bad at accepting feedback. Not that I don't listen, but that I'm very grumpy, basically, and so I prefer to get my feedback in comments and written so that I can be grumpy alone before I then go, oh, that's a good point that person made, and then make adjustments, right? Like I have to work it out with the punching bag before I am able to listen and hear what people are saying. And so I can kind of imagine myself imagine having a private channel in Discord with some, 50, 100 trusted community members and saying like, hey, here's the spec for the new arena mode. Let us know what you think. Put comments. What do you like? What do you not like? And part of me thinks like, oh, I bet that could help. As long as I had faith in myself and stayed true to design, that could really help guide some of the decisions. And the other part of me thinks like, oh, that will destroy you, Ethan. Like you would hate people so much if you got feedback on a spec. But I don't know how. So as I tell this story about my own struggles, like how are you leveraging the community to help improve designs before they go out? Are you releasing specs to people? Are you just releasing features and talking about it afterwards? It sounds like you use the sentiment to help inform some of the metrics you're tracking as well.
Yeah, we are, but we're not doing it to the force of like everything is out there, because obviously, like I think it's a bit bad if every decision taking is done via the community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a good practice. But it's good that every once in a while you put something out there, you check the feedback, and then you get back into just fixing it or doing something. And it's different, I must say. Like it's different if they have stakes in it. Mm-hmm. It's different. It's not like they have nothing to lose. Let me just, not even give it a good look and just put my comments. No. They will really look very deeply into it, and they would give insight that I have never seen before.
Wow.
On a related note, I think just personal opinion, I think calling these white papers, in my opinion, a bit archaic. I think that comes from the fact that some of the early blockchain protocols, had very strict technical specifications and where the name come from. Why don't we should coin a new term here. When we're talking about, we're releasing our game design document, because that's what these essentially are. Game design documents with a token design as well. I don't know if they should be called game papers or something else, but
yeah, I think that's what the Void Runners team call their game papers. I like
yeah,
that.
That's true.
I like that. Yeah. Also, the entire term whitelist and blacklist is quite loaded and worth removing from vocabulary, actually. Yeah. It'll be interesting.
We should be calling whitelist the whitelisted people the chosen ones.
The chosen ones.
You're on the list of the chosen ones now.
Yeah. They're all becoming Jews. Basically, they're part of the chosen people. We're calling ours. We're trying to be careful and make sure to say allow list. I like allow list for that. I don't know. It's and that's actually I'm modeling out allow list size per gotcha drop this week. Is my big fun task. Khalid, as you look forward to the future, does it feel, in free to play, we kind of think about soft launch, worldwide launch, live ops, and then live ops is just forever. And this new Web3 model feels almost early access like, right? You could almost map it to, you guys have done a Kickstarter campaign, and now you've released part of it to early access, and then you actually did, the token launch could be viewed as its first campaign, the land launch is a campaign. Does this feel like you might just be in perpetual early access forever? Or does it feel like there'll be a point where you say, like, is it per experience? You'll be like, hey, arena mode is live. Like, I don't know. Does it feel significantly different as a launch system than mobile free to play?
It does. It definitely does, and it's much better of an experience. You know, you get the feedback much sooner than what would happen free to play, and you know, you would at least you would generate some revenue before the game is out, which I think now is a good thing. But later on, I think that as sad as it would be, I don't think it will last. Where they could pre-book the revenue before the game is out. I don't think a lot of people would be able to pull that out later on.
Yeah.
But this is what it is now, and you know, everyone is utilizing it. But it's definitely different, and it's definitely less punishing than free to play. That's what I have to say, for sure.
Anton, do you have a question? Normally, when you put your mic, nope. All right.
No, I was just planning a joke, but
okay.
We'll save it for next step. We'll save it for the next episode as a cliffhanger.
Well, just to close it out, $72 million. It's a giant land sale. Are there any parts of it that you think are the keys to why it was so successful? Things you would recommend to other game designers as they think about how they plan out their own land sales or NFT launches? Like, why do you think Eluvium was so successful? Especially
sure.
Against the background of, like, the hype cycle's over, crypto winter is here, it's a bear market. Like, I have to be honest, I was not expecting the project to put up these sort of numbers. I was a little afraid, and you guys crushed it. So, like, what do you think are the keys to this success?
Yeah, so you know, aside from the people working at Illuvium and how much time and effort that they put into the land sale and its success, like, there are definitely some things that I would attribute the success to, and obviously the first one is like the goodwill of the brand. Like, as I said, the brand have been out there for a very long time, and we're not just in it to just, you know, sell NFTs as soon as we can. We really made sure that there is some products that are out there. At least people played the beta and then they checked how the gameplay would be. So that was attributed to the success, as well as we very clearly communicated what is the utility that you're going to get from the lands. It's very clear. You're going to get fuel, and you're going to get blueprints, which you could acquire if you scan, and then you get a biodata and so on, which would be used for skins later on in the other games. So the utility is very well communicated. People know exactly what they are getting into. And even the fuel, we stated that it would be, as you know, equivalent to 5% of the company's revenue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we were very detailed on exactly what the people will get. So transparency, the goodwill of the brand, and I think the enormous work that they have been done in our company, like in the marketing department, did pay dividends. And going into the land sale, we had a few main concerns. One is, like, we wanted to avoid gas wars as much as possible, especially seeing what happened to the other lands. And we wanted to avoid failed transaction, and we wanted to utilize price discovery. And the entire Dutch auction system with batched lands that we did was entirely designed to do this. And because of that, like, if you compare the total gas fees in the other deeds, which is around 170 million, compared to us, which is $380,000.
Wow.
It's like the difference is astronomical. Yeah, and it was a really success. Like, I would put this as a case study of how a proper NFT sale should be. Like, we had no whitelist, we had nothing. Pure Dutch auction with batches to avoid bottlenecks of transactions, and it went smoothly and perfectly. Thank God.
Wow. That's great. If I've just added to my fantasy pile of work that I'll never get to writing a case study on this land sale for the community. Maybe I can convince somebody I bet I'll just trick Javier into writing it for me, and that'll be how I do it. Khalid,
that's a good idea. I was thinking about writing something, to be honest.
If you'd like to, in all seriousness, if you'd like to co-author article about the land sale, I know I'd love to learn from you, and I'm sure the audience would as well. It's a huge success, and there's a lot that people should pay attention to.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
With that, I think we'll bring this episode to a close. Anton, thank you for co-piloting this interview with me. And Khalid and the Eluvium team, congrats on all your success, and thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yes.
Thanks, and we hope all the listeners fly with us again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye, friends.